Hello, everybody. Welcome to the special business meeting of Tuesday, June 30th. Holland Squallen, Quistsuxmet, Squamish Oakmail. As always, we're glad to do our work today on the traditional unceded territory of the Squamish Nation. Please be advised that this council meeting is being live streamed, recorded, and will be available to the public to view on the District of Squamish website following the meeting. If you have concerns, please notify corporate officer present at the meeting, which is Ms. Von Budeau. Can I have someone move adoption of the agenda? It is an amended agenda, so we're adopting the move by Councillor French, second by Councillor Hamilton. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. So our first order of business is item 3A1, development permit 640 for Cheekeye Parcel E apartments. I will turn it over to staff to introduce themselves and run us through the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Herford. Good morning, Mayor and Council. My name is Brian Daly, planner with Community Development. I'm here this morning to present a development permit application for the Cheekeye Parcel E apartments. The subject property is located on an unaddressed parcel off Ross Road, known as Parcel E South, as indicated in the CD82 zone. The property is currently undeveloped. The property is subject to Development Permit Area 1, Protection of the Environment, Development Permit Area 3, Universal Form and Character Guidelines, and Development Permit Area 11, Primary Wildfire Area. The proposal meets the DPA 1 guidelines and is being processed at a staff level because it is a delegated permit. Compliance with DPA 11 guidelines will be secured through a Section 219 covenant as per the OCP requirements. The remainder of this presentation will discuss the DPA 3 compliance. This DP application seeks to establish the form and character of 3 apartment buildings. Building 1 is a mixed-use building containing 85 affordable rental units and 1,474 square meters of commercial space that is proposed to be used as a daycare. Although the daycare use is not secured, the commercial area meets the minimum commercial area requirement specified in the land development agreement that was associated with the original rezoning application for this parcel. Building 2 is a market rental building containing 85 market rental units. And Building 3 includes 137 market apartment units and an amenity building for the market condo residents. The market and affordable rental units will be secured as rental in perpetuity by housing agreements. Project meets the requirements of the CD82 zone. All of the buildings are at or below the maximum height requirement of 20 meters. The parkade has been set back considerably from the west side to mitigate the impact on the stand of trees on the adjacent property. Building massing throughout the development includes articulated balconies and large corner balconies. A variety of materials and colors has been used to give the effect of different building sections and create visual interest. The design meets the DPA 3 guidelines related to context, character, siting and orientation, relationship of buildings to the street, building form, massing and variation, building roofscape, and building materials and colors. The site is accessed by 2 drive aisles off Ross Road. One drive aisle provides vehicular access to the center of the site, where there is some at-grade parking, and a ramp provides access to the underground parkade for buildings 1 and 2. A second drive aisle from Ross Road provides access to the underground parkade for building 3. In accordance with the zoning bylaw, affordable rental units do not require off-street parking spaces. However, 52 spaces are proposed for this use. In addition, there are 30 spaces for the daycare, 156 spaces for the 85 market rental units, and 254 spaces for the market apartment units. Parking provided exceeds the requirements of the zoning bylaw. The design meets the DPA 3 guidelines related to parking, site circulation, and solid waste storage. 10,957 square meters of usable open space is provided, which equates to 53% of the lot area and exceeds the 30% requirement in the zoning bylaw. There's a central shared amenity space with both active and passive recreation opportunities, including play structures, shade structure, lawn, and accessible pathway system linking all the buildings with the amenities. The design meets the DPA 3 guidelines related to outdoor open space, common areas, and amenity space. Building 3 has an additional 678 square meters of outdoor amenity space for the residents of Building 3. That includes an outdoor pool and space for saunas adjacent to the indoor amenity space for that building. The maintenance cost of this space will be paid by the strata of Building 3 only. As such, this space is only for the use of the residents of Building 3. Landscape design focuses on blending into the existing forested landscape with native species, minimizing wildlife attractants, and adhering to fire smart guidelines. The perimeter landscape consists of terraced natural rock with native landscape planting to soften areas where the parkade structure is exposed. The proposed landscape design is consistent with the relevant DPA 3 guidelines. Given that there are no variances to the zoning bylaw requested as part of this application, the project is to be reviewed for conformance with the DPA 3 guidelines, and staff's review concludes that the DPA guidelines are met for this project. To inform the community, the project was posted to the district's development review page, and a development sign has been posted to the site. No comments or requests for project information meetings were received. So given that the project complies with the DPA 3 guidelines, staff are recommending that the permit be issued subject to the conditions noted on the slide, and that the housing agreement associated with the market rental units be given first 3 readings. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. Council, questions? Go ahead, Councilor Pennegill.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if staff can remind me how ADP feedback relates to any decision we might have in terms of the DP.
Through the mayor, ADP feedback, or ADP is the advisory design panel provides their professional input on compliance with the DPA guidelines. So staff take that feedback and work with the applicant to address their comments and I guess in theory would bring the project more into compliance with DPA 3 guidelines. So they're sort of informative to staff, and then staff relay that information to council as they make their decision.
Okay, and I just wonder if staff can maybe provide a bit more assessment. I guess I had a bit of a challenge with the comment about dog parks, about why they weren't needed because there's lots of trails around, but we have an off-leash bylaw. So the point of a dog park is it's a place where you can have your dogs off leash, which you can't do on the trail. So it doesn't really seem to address that. I don't think we have something specific about dog parks in our DPA guidelines, but there's a bit of a conflict there. I'm just wondering if, in my mind, I'm wondering if you could speak to that a little bit.
Through the mayor, sometimes ADP provides comments that may not relate directly to the DPA 3 guidelines. There's no regulation in zoning that requires this, and there's no DPA guideline that requires this. Sometimes they make recommendations that could be a nice thing to think about, but they're not a requirement in any of our regulations. Did you want to add anything?
Through the chair, I would just add that consideration of development permits should be in alignment with the guidelines, which is where council's authority lies.
Okay, thank you. And then just in terms of accessibility, and I had trouble opening the architectural diagrams, but can you speak to, like I understand the site is accessible, but do you have to sort of take a much longer route to get where you need to get if you need crutches or a chair or something, or is it sort of just as direct?
Through the chair, I can't comment if it's just as direct. You'd have to use elevators in certain instances or kind of go around. It depends on where you're trying to access and what part of the site you're on, obviously, but the whole site is accessible. Obviously, it's not always possible to have as direct a line as possible. If you could just go down a flight of stairs, that you wouldn't be able to if you had mobility issues, but there are elevators and access into the buildings that allows for the site to be accessible.
And sorry for clarity, so does that mean if I want to, there are certain places where if I want to get from one outdoor place on the site to another outdoor place on the site, I might have to go into a building and use an elevator to connect those pieces?
Depending on where you are located on the site, that is possible.
Okay, and would these elevators and buildings be accessible 24/7?
Yes. You would either be living in the building so you would have access, or you would be there visiting someone so they would provide you access into the building.
Okay, I will think about that a bit. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councilor French.
Thanks, Mayor Herford. One of the things that the ADP asked about that wasn't a lot of follow-up, or at least I didn't watch the whole video, was public art. There's no public art planned for these three buildings. And so my first question is, does public art fall under this, or is it covered somewhere else?
Through the mayor, my understanding is that the applicant for the overall Cheekeye development is going to look for opportunities to incorporate public art throughout. It is, again, a guideline, and guidelines are not requirements. Not every project has to provide public art. It wasn't secured for this site specifically. So the applicant on this site has not proposed it as part of this project.
Okay. So is one possible scenario that farther along in project development, there could potentially be public art somewhere within these three buildings, or does this firm up that there will be no public art in amongst these three buildings?
Through the mayor, at this time, there's no proposal for public art. That's not to say that if the applicant was working with the overall developer for this neighborhood, that if there is an opportunity, that would be up to the applicant to decide and make that proposal. This does not stop them from doing it, but it is not proposed.
Perfect. That's exactly what the detail I was looking for. I'm happy to hear that public art is still very much on the radar. Thanks.
Thank you. Just in the ADP feedback, it was great to see the notes and the responsiveness to most of it. There was one that didn't get a comment, and I was trying to look. It doesn't appear that it's a requirement in DPA 3, but it just says review the bike parking or location of, or some comment like that. I just wondered what is regulating that. I only see the Class B bicycle spaces should be in high visibility and convenient locations, and it meets guideline. I don't see it anywhere else. Is there something else regulating that, or is this one of those comments that's, yes, it could be from ADP that it could be better, but it doesn't actually pertain to necessarily to what we're considering today?
I would say that it is the latter of the comment that you just noted. And the Class B bicycle parking spaces are located in convenient locations. The bicycle storage for the particular units that's required in the zoning bylaw meets those requirements.
Okay, thank you. If there's no further questions, I'd be looking for a motion. Are you ready to move the staff recommendation? I'll second that. Would you like to speak to it?
There's no surprises in any of what's in front of us today. And I think that this is consistent with the bigger plan that has been in place for a while for this area. So this is my motivation for putting this motion forward.
Thank you. Other comments? Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I'll support the motion on the floor. As Councillor French mentioned, this is in alignment with the proposals we've been seeing up to now, and in my mind is consistent with the DP guidelines. I see Councillor Pettingill's sort of concern on dog parks and potentially accessibility. But I think that on balance, this meets the criteria, and these small exceptions may be workable into the project. And things like dog parks, I see the value in them, but I also see the challenges with them as well. So for this project, I'm happy to support. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Pettingill, go ahead.
Yeah, I think a little bit torn on this one. I think in terms of the decision in front of us compliance with the DPA, I'm a little bit on the fence. And so it's always a question of, do I think this is going to get support. Do I make a sort of a statement with a vote against, or do I support and try and deal with it in my comments? I think this time I'm going to try and use my comments. The dog park piece, to some degree, that is, the buyer finding something that's appropriate for the sorts of pets they want to have, is the one side of the argument. The other side is, as a district, we have put a lot of time and resources into trying to retrofit dog parks. And so if that's where our community is, I think we have to be thoughtful as we design new neighborhoods. It's not in the DPA, so it's hard to hold the developer to account for that. But maybe in a DPA update, it's something to consider. The accessibility, that's probably the biggest one for me here. I think it's not good enough to just have a theoretical accessible route. It needs to be, if we're serious about accessibility, it needs to be just as, or given our history, maybe the most efficient route, and then we build the other routes around it for people who have more ability to navigate different routes. And so I think going forward, maybe it's sort of a flag to other developers. I will be sort of looking at this guideline a lot more, I think. And then just sort of a comment, and I believe there's not a no gas covenant for all uses on this, and DPA is not the place when there's no variances to deal with that. But that's a challenge that I think we should address with some of these developments going forward. If not through the DPA, then through other mechanisms when we have the opportunity, and hopefully developers would just start to do that more proactively. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in support of the motion, our decision here today is whether this or not this development meets the guidelines, and including accessibility as part of that. I do think that the guidelines themselves, should receive, we'll call it regular maintenance to make sure that we're getting the end result that we need. But it's clear to me that this proposal does meet all the guidelines. And in the presentation I also heard things that I don't often hear in this room, that this requirement exceeds that requirement and isn't looking for a variation on height or any other piece of this puzzle. So essentially, when things meet the guideline, this is what we've asked for, and we're validating that it does in fact meet the guideline. And I agree with staff's assessment that it does. Now, the guidelines themselves could use some adjustment, and perhaps there's things in rezoning that could be considered, or could be considered in future if there's any changes in the general precinct. And that's where I think the dog park type conversations should live, and not here. So I'm happy to support this and see this move forward. And I also want to recognize that this is the first in the area of what has been a substantive investment in the barrier and the ongoing work infrastructure wise up on Ross Road. So it's really quite exciting to see this precinct really kick off, and to do it in such a substantive way as the opening move, if you will, is quite exciting. So looking forward to seeing this come to fruition. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. If we're ready, we can go right into the next one. Is that okay? You're good? Awesome. Okay, so we'll move on to the District of Squamish Solid Waste Utility Regulation Bylaw number 2870, 2021, Amendment Bylaw number 3262, 2026. I'll turn over to staff to introduce themselves and run us through the presentation.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. My name is Shannon White, and I am on the Community and Infrastructure and Services team, and I'm here supported with Mrs. Wangi, who is the Director of Corporate Services. And we are here to present some amendments to the Solid Waste Utility and Regulation Bylaw. The goal of these amendments are to align the Solid Waste Utility Bylaw with the operational needs of the Squamish landfill to ensure that staff are able to operate efficiently and effectively and in a cost-effective manner that provides a safe place for community, as well as aligns with the operational needs of the site and is within the authority of the District of Squamish. I just want to provide a bit of context because a couple of the amendments are related to wood definitions. And so there are some proposed changes to align again with the operational needs that have changed and evolved over time. And I just want to provide a few graphics or images to put context to what I'm talking to, because it's not always clear. So currently we have the terms dirty wood, clean wood, and yard waste in our solid waste utility bylaw, as well as in the fees and charges bylaw. And what we currently call dirty wood is no longer material that can be composted or used for biofuel. And so it does go into the garbage or into the landfill. So we are basically dirty wood, the term will no longer exist at the landfill, and that material will be encompassed under the residual waste, which is garbage. And that's painted wood, wood with glues like MFD, or it's stained. And then clean wood will remain clean wood. And that is really like lumber, clean pallets, untreated, unpainted, unstained wood waste that can be used. It is often chipped up and used as biofuel. Sometimes it's composted by our contractor. And then yard waste is being turned into green waste. And that's truly like yard clearing, vegetative matter, brush. And these are further outlined in the attachments in the package in the bylaw definitions. But this is just to kind of give you an idea of what there is. And just, there's a lot of text on this, but this is truly in the report to council package. And I just want to walk through the proposed amendments. So really there's small additions of aligning, ensuring the term, for example, gyprock, which is a technical term. We include the word drywall, which is more like used day-to-day term. As well, we have in our bylaw all the wording around waste management special events was limited to special events on District of Squamish property or facilities, and we want to expand that to Crown land, private land, which we are already permitting through our special events permit system. And then again, as I mentioned, aligning those wood waste terms and definitions in the bylaw to ensure it meets what we're doing on site with the landfill. And then 5.1 and 5.2, so number D or letter D on the screen is inclusion of the word occupier to ensure that currently special events are caught or captured under the term occupier in the solid waste utility bylaw. So we say the occupier must, separate their garbage and compost at events. However, on surface property requirements, which are those properties that do not have our curbside collection, we have currently in the bylaw only owner. So we're just making sure that like a temporary use is also required to separate. So some of these are very just nuanced amendments to make sure we're capturing the intent of the bylaw. Similar with 7.6 is just ensuring it's a bit of wordsmithing to make sure that everyone using the landfill must be in compliance with our code of conduct. And then we have removing, there's section 9.1 was tied to some specific examples listed in the bylaw. So it said, for example, clean wood, dirty wood, and because definitions can change as per today, we want to remove the examples because the intent of that clause will remain the same. And then the next two are new. They are best practices. We've been working with other folks in our industry to ensure this is what folks are doing. However, so if someone comes to landfill, this is 9.18. If someone comes to landfill and they have multiple materials and they drop them off all in the proper bins, however, they choose not to rescale and get the different weights and rates for those different materials, we will charge them at the highest rate. So say they drop off drywall, which is expensive, metal, which is not expensive, and garbage, which is not expensive. Drywall is the most expensive out of those three things. We will charge them at the drywall rate because we have no way of understanding exactly how much to charge them for each individual material. Happy to walk through that again if I didn't explain it clearly. However, the idea is that we just are charging to ensure we're recouping the costs that we then have to pay to dispose of that material. 9.19 is a new practice. There are times when customers are not on the scale entirely when we capture their weight. So their truck tires or trailer might not be on the scale. This is a continual training exercise with the staff there. However, it does happen. And so what happens is then when the truck drops off the material and they come back on site, the idea is then the weight is off and they are charged basically the amount of their truck weight or half of their truck weight. And so what we have done to ensure we're in compliance with our the financial aspects of the solid waste utility bylaw is we are refunding them the entire amount minus our minimum charge. And so this clause enables staff to take the previous 3 to 5 tickets of the same vehicle license plate and the same material type and take an average and charge that to the customer. So this clause truly only applies to some of our regular customers in town that are using the landfill regularly, like a couple smaller like yard waste or construction companies or something like this. It doesn't happen frequently, but we need a mechanism to be able to recoup some of the money that we are currently losing through this action. And then the last two, Schedules B and C is truly just minor amendments to reflect the changes. It's funny, you change one definition and there's some, after effects. And this is again, just aligning with those wood waste definitions. And Schedule D change is expanding. We had it specified to lead acid batteries, and we just want to expand all batteries are banned from the landfill because they can cause landfill fires. So we don't want your batteries in landfill. Please recycle them elsewhere. With that, I would like to bring forward the resolution that staff are bringing forward, which is that the District of Squamish Solid Waste Utility and Regulation Bylaw number 2870, 2021, Amendment Bylaw number 3262, 2026 be given first, second, and third reading. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Council, questions? Go ahead, Councilor Pettingill.
So in terms of G 9.19, I appreciate the explanation, but intuitively it's and I see this deals with a regular customer, it would seem that it's someone that comes once in a while or it's their first time that doesn't park on the scale properly, and therefore that's when this issue might come up the most. It's not clear for me, how do we deal with that? Is that still then minimum charge? Or what happens there?
Thank you. Great question. And so I just want to clarify, we're talking about H, right? Number 9.19, just to make sure we're.
G 9.9.
Right. The package changed slightly.
Oh, I tried to upload.
Sorry. There was.
It's 9.19, just to be clear.
Yeah, thank you.
9.9, and I did download the new one, but I wasn't sure if
That's okay.
Needed, so
We'll just try to work on we'll work from the piece that hasn't changed. So 9.19 is the question.
Don't capture the weight correctly. There is no mechanism to understand the weight that was in the vehicle. Even though we have cameras, we don't offer like volume estimates at the landfill just to ensure transparency and accuracy. And so I would say that a one-time customer is a gap in the system. So if they dispute their ticket, we will investigate it. And if we find that it is accurate, then we will refund them. Every ticket dispute goes through an investigation process to ensure that, we're accurately refunding people if needed or not refunding people. You'd be surprised, there are regular customers who have their weight captured incorrectly. Again, this happens 4 to 5 times a year. It's not a regular occurrence. It's just over the years it has added up, and we need a mechanism to kind of capture that.
On this category, that 9.18, 9.19, the multiple weigh-in, like reweighing function, is that something that the attendants has the ability to help, like orchestrate? Because it feels like the system in its current form is, I'm going to ask a future form question after this, but in the current form is really set up to weigh, drop, weigh, leave. And that weigh and go back in doesn't feel intuitive with what's there. Is that part of what the attendant on the ground is aiming to support?
Great question. Thank you. Through the mayor. So yes, the scale attendants play a key role in directing and navigating and informing customers how to use the site and their options. And they will tell someone, you can save money if you rescale multiple times, but there are people who just are looking for a convenience factor. They're like, I want to go in, drop off my stuff and leave. And so this captures those people.
And okay, thank you for that. And then the 9.19, what's happening there? Like, is this the scale? I don't go there frequently, but I've been. Are we seeing vehicles that are longer than the scale can accommodate? Like by the time you have a dually long or a crew cab long box with a big trailer, it just doesn't physically fit, or is there some other thing happening here?
Thank you. Great question. I would say it's twofold. Unfortunately, it's a bit of an infrastructural gap that is something we cannot cheaply fix. The scale hut is located too close to the end of the scale. So as a vehicle pulls up, they need to speak to the attendant to tell them what materials they have. And when you do that, half of your vehicle is often not sitting on the scale. If you have like a long, I don't know what they're called, extended cab or a truck and a trailer. And so that vehicle will say, hey, I've got, garbage. And the tenant will say, pull forward, I'll capture your weight. We do have lots of turnover at the scale, and sometimes that piece is missed. They'll capture the weight while they're still sitting off the scale.
The practice used to be use the intercom when everything was fully on the scale. I saw the intercom is still there and labeled, and I got a bit of a shouting at when I drove up to the intercom past the booth, which was the practice. So is that not a way to address this, to revert to or to get that piece going? Or is that, I understand why we need, this in the current scenario, but is there another way or an additional way to address this challenge?
Great, thank you. Yes, the landfill does have an intercom. It is located further down the scale, so that way someone could speak through the intercom and the whole weight is captured. It works. It's not a great system. Vehicles are very loud. Sometimes the attendants can't hear over the intercom. It's crackly. It's not a great tool. So most scale attendants prefer the window situation.
Okay, so then going forward, this configuration, this challenge has been incorporated into like addressing it through the design of our expansion and so on. Is that a safe assumption to make?
Great question. Thank you. Through the mayor, as staff are working on the landfill expansion, yes, a better placement of the scale hut location related to the scale itself, the weigh scale, is part of it. Depending on costs, there might not be a second scale immediately, which won't alleviate that having to reweigh for each material, unfortunately, but will come out during detailed design. But yes, better scale hut placement is part of it.
Great, thank you. Council, any additional questions on this? Councillor Anderson?
Thank you. I had a question regarding the new definitions regarding wood-related material.
Can we hold on just one second? Do you want to just pull up that your slide that speaks to this? I feel like this is where thank you. There you go, Councillor Anderson. I'm assuming this is a useful slide from earlier, but over to you.
This is very helpful, Mayor Herford. My question is it's maybe straightforward, but we're removing the definition in the section 2.1 definitions in the bylaw of dirty wood waste. I was just curious, does this mean that category of materials is captured then in demolition and construction waste. I just didn't see the notice as to how then we're relegating that category of materials. Dirty wood waste no longer in the definitions. Where do we see that category of materials now?
Thank you, through the mayor. Dirty wood waste has not explicitly been added to other definitions. It is captured in both construction demolition waste and residual waste, because not all dirty wood is produced through construction demolition. So we didn't want to what's the expression, like make it, I can't think of a better word, like stuck to construction and demolition definition, but it is captured under residual waste.
Thank you. That's what I expected. And dirty wood waste has always been a little bit clumsy to my mind anyway, so that makes it clear. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor Herford and Councillor Pettingill for the questions about the scale. I had all the same questions, so that's all answered. I did want to do a little bit of a dig into the clean wood definition. In the definition that we have now, there's no reference to nails, staples, and other similar fasteners. So I'm presuming that's a conscious decision. And for instance, pallets that are stapled together are accepted as clean wood because those metal products get taken out in our chipping process. Is that correct?
Great, thank you. Through the chair, I just want to make sure, so the questions are why we didn't include the terms nails, staples, etc., and also what happens to clean wood? Okay, great. So we didn't include some of the nuances around clean wood. Yes, nails, fasteners, metal pieces are currently accepted through the clean wood definition. Because end markets are constantly changing, which is what happened here with the painted wood. We used to take painted wood and get chipped, and it used to be burned as biofuel. Now the biofuel facilities don't want painted wood. So this is kind of where we're at. And so right now they take metal fasteners that are in pallets, for example, or nails. However, we wanted to make sure we captured a high level enough that we had the detail, but we didn't want to get into the exact nuances. So at the landfill, it says nails are accepted, for example. Here nails are not mentioned in any of these definitions. And so our clean wood, as I mentioned, it does get chipped, and it currently goes to Lower Mainland, and it gets composted or sent to another facility for and burned as biofuel. So that's the kind of two end uses for our clean wood.
Great. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton. And then I'll come to you back, Councillor Anderson.
Wood is such a hot topic. More questions on wood. In the clean wood, is cedar wood included in clean wood, or does cedar need to go into residual waste?
These are excellent questions. Thank you. So currently, as of today, cedar wood can go in the clean wood. Cedar is actually very interesting. For the past 6 months, I believe, or don't quote me on 6 months, but for a past kind of small amount of time, it actually was going in the landfill. Again, that end disposal site said, hey, we now can take cedar. So cedar is going into our clean wood bay. This could change again. That's why, again, we're trying to keep the definitions high enough that we have flexibility to change operationally without having to come to council every single time and say, okay, now we need cedar in garbage instead of clean wood. So that we're trying to find that balance where we have the authority to charge appropriately and still reflect operational things that change like in an instance. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So in order to, I see the need for that flexibility. Would it make sense to put into the clean wood waste some caveat that the species of wood accepted is at discretion isn't quite the right word, but can change from time to time. It's not at the discretion of the attendant, but the definition of species that are acceptable can change from time to time. Because if you show up with a mixed load of cedar and pine clean wood and just expect to dump it off and then find out you have to separate, or it can be frustrating. Is there any way we can signal in the bylaw that you need to check at the landfill?
Sorry, just one moment.
I'm going to propose that I might flesh out another question from Councillor Anderson. We can do a timeout to get an answer to this one. Just feels like, looks like a pretty fulsome huddle. So let's make sure we give you this space to do that. And just on this point, I wonder about just language that says, subject to change from time to time, something like this, because I appreciate the point Councillor Hamilton's making, but that likely could be true about other nuances in here and just how we address that. Although this is a good one to kick that discussion off. Councillor Anderson, do you have a question before we go to a timeout with?
Thank you, Mayor Herford. My question is more a general one about this project of revising the bylaw, and it is in connection with the demolition and construction waste. Now, in our community discussion of the landfill over the last several years, we discussed C&D waste, or demolition and construction waste, as an important challenge and an important opportunity. Yet here in this definition, it is explicit that it is the demolition and construction waste is that waste which is not suitable for diversion. So my question is, when we craft these definitions, I'm noticing that doesn't relate to our typical discussion about it as a challenge and opportunity for diversion. But are we looking at other municipalities and their solid waste bylaws with respect to the definitions and the trends of defining and describing these different categories? Has that been an aspect of your project to check what are other municipalities doing as far as their definitions of these waste streams in their own bylaws? Thank you.
Great, thank you. Excellent question. And ensuring that we have accurate definitions that align with industry best practices, as well as our operational needs, is like always a fine balance. And in this project for coming to council today and ensuring we had definitions, in particular, our focus was wood waste. We reviewed bylaws such as Metro Vancouver's, the Regional District in Nanaimo. I believe there was the Comox Valley Regional District. There was other very large landfills that have large teams in particular and that are paying extra attention was reviewed. And so I believe all three updated, the two updated, in particular green waste is exactly the same as Metro Vancouver's. We of course verified to make sure it aligned with our needs, but I believe word for word, it's almost the same as Metro Vancouver's, for example. But so yes, always we're looking at other bylaws.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so we'll take is 10 minutes seems to be good for these. So we'll take a 5-minute recess to get an answer for this to Councillor Hamilton's inquiry, and we'll reconvene then. So let's call it at 25 after. So it's a little over 5 minutes. Thank you. Okay, we are back. So I will go turn it back to staff.
Great, thank you. Staff just wanted to address the question that was raised earlier about adding nuance into the definition of clean wood in particular, related to specific enabling there to be flexibility around specific species that are accepted or not accepted. And so staff don't recommend adding any extra wording around that make the definition too detailed. When there are any changes or nuances to the definitions of what is accepted at the landfill, this is communicated through the different District of Squamish channels. So we have information on our website. There's a large, there's 2 tipping fee signs at the landfill. We try to communicate any changes through the electronic newsletter that the District of Squamish has as well. Just to provide any clarification, or if we've noticed, someone having a constant question coming up, that we can address that easily. Every single definition in this bylaw has nuances, and we just want to make sure that as soon as we add too much detail, we reduce the flexibility for that. So thank you.
Okay, council, any other questions? I feel like we're ready for a motion if someone's ready to move that recommendation or something else. You're moving the staff recommendation. Thank you. The seconder, Councillor Anderson seconds. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor French?
Yes, thanks, Mayor Herford. Just on this last point, I fully align with staff on the recommendation. With social media as it is today, I think it's easier than ever to have the ability to convey operational changes at the landfill or within our recycling system. It's important to allow for operational flexibility because this world does change quickly. So the ability to pivot and move with speed has its advantages. And sometimes within a period of just a few months, we can see a change and then a reversal of that change because of market conditions. Generally, what we have here, I think, aligns with best practices in this world, and fully support what staff is bringing to us.
Thank you. Any other comments here? Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. In alignment with the Councillor French's observation, I think it's important that we be nimble and flexible and be prepared. And so too much detail, as Ms. White has pointed out, can be clumsy, a handicap, or a burden. But we should always be aware of the evolving world of uses and diversion opportunities. And these are always going to be changing, and that's a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks. I'll support the bylaw. This is bylaw changes. There are a lot of really small and very important changes that will make things run a lot smoother. And I think in terms of sitting in this seat and our role, one of the challenges that I continually have is looking at bylaws as separate from how the operation of a facility happens, because the two are tightly related. The two are tightly connected. Sometimes operations is impeded by bylaw. Sometimes it can be improved. Sometimes it can't. And so thanks for the consideration of making a bylaw that doesn't touch your operations in any way. But I totally respect if you think this keeps your operation moving more smoothly. Thanks.
Comment.
Yeah,
You don't have to. I just want to make sure I didn't miss you.
No, I did want to make a comment. Happy to support this. I appreciate the discussion. I do sort of wonder, reflecting a bit, if in the future, and I don't think it's critical enough to resolve it here, but if maybe we want to consider if it's possible to have a bit of a preamble to the bylaw that just says, hey, double check the Squamish waste site for any additional specifics or whatever, so we don't really get into it in the bylaw, but sort of, because if I Google search and I have the bylaw, I'm going to assume that tells me exactly what I can do. And then if I find out there's other things, that would be a bit confusing maybe as a user. Now, how many people actually have that circumstance, I don't know. So it's maybe not a problem we're solving, but something to maybe consider when we look at our analytics and see how people are coming into the system. Maybe a preamble could help, but fine. Appreciate the changes. I think they do add good clarity and they make sense. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm speaking in support of the motion. However, I do struggle with 9.19, which is the vehicle on scale piece. It's meant for frequent customers just by the nature of the wording and what we heard here today. And so there's a piece of interacting with our systems that should become familiar. I also think that this challenge, we heard that the system with intercom and like the things on the ground there, I think could really eliminate the need for this if they were working to their full potential. There's a lot of businesses that rely intensively on a similar system of a remote an intercom essentially. So I accept this is what we need right now, but I would encourage more fulsome addressing this in a more fulsome way, and I'd like to not ever need this particular piece. And I don't feel strongly enough about it to remove it, given it's where we are with the operations and the apparent need for a mechanism when this happens. Although, but outside of that, I think we've struck a good staff have struck a good balance of the of being able to provide as much clarity as possible in the bylaw and leaving room for those bits on the edges. But it does mean that we need to communicate those intentionally. And I heard that sort of with comments through the around the room. I do think that likely the new charges, or which we'll talk about, but those definitions and that public facing piece is generally much easier to find than the bylaw itself. So I do think that that's where that should live, but we also want to make sure that that is in fact the case when people go to investigate what's it going to cost me, how do I get rid of this, whatever this material is that I no longer need. So yeah, so I think we've landed in a good spot with those two sort of caveats on this. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much. So council, we'll go into we're ahead of schedule, but let's keep going. We'll see if we can get to lunch a bit earlier. So we're on to the fees and charges bylaw. This is bylaw number 3185, 2025, amendment bylaw number 3249, 2026. And we'll get underway when staff are ready. The floor is yours when you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Melissa Bomblito. I'm the Director of Corporate Services. I am here today with Julie Wengi, the GM of Corporate Administration, Corporate Services. Good start. And I'm supported by many staff today to answer specific questions related to proposed schedule changes in District of Squamish Fees and Charges Bylaw number 3185, 2025. A bit of background, the legislation enables council by bylaw to impose a fee with respect to all or part of a service of the municipality, the use of municipal property, or the exercise of authority to regulate, prohibit, or impose requirements. The District of Squamish uses a centralized fees and charges bylaw, and in the fall of 2025, the district moved towards a biannual amendment to the bylaw. On May 19th, 2026, the District of Squamish Fees and Charges Bylaw number 3185-2025, Amendment Bylaw number 3249-2026 went to Council for consideration of first, second, and third readings. And this is the first amendment of the year. And the bylaw was given first and second reading with several amendments. Following are is a summary of the amendments at second reading. So there were three. The first was the cemetery Schedule 8. We had an error in the bylaw that had the oversized liners listed at $6,000, and that needs to be reduced to $600. And then 2 to Schedule 18 for Brennan Park Recreation Center rentals. The fee was amended by deleting $124.50 under youth local nonprofit groups and replacing with $93.50. And the third was a new fee added to for a 12-month family pass at $900. Since then, we have noticed a few other corrections that staff are recommending. The first is Schedule 12 to landfill tipping fees, and that's actually to align with the presentation that you just saw related to solid waste. Several of the names of materials have been changed to align with the other bylaw. And the second is to Schedule 15, specifically Section 15.9. There was a duplicated late comer fee. So there were two in the bylaw, and the previous one was deleted, and the new one that council saw in the amendment bylaw in May is still there. Staff are also recommending a slight change to the effective date of the bylaw. There are two schedules, Schedule 10 and Schedule 6, that staff are recommending could come into effect at adoption. And all other schedules staff are recommending come into effect January 2nd, 2027 to ensure that the community has adequate time and adequate notice. Next steps, if the bylaw receives third reading today, we'll schedule it for adoption at the next regular business meeting. There will be another amendment to the fees and charges bylaw coming in the fall to align with the utility fees for the next budget. And the following is the recommendation for council consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So council, we've, as we heard in the presentation, we've seen this before, and we're focusing on the changes from last time. However, questions on the totality are welcome, but the changes are is where I would suggest we focus. Any questions at this point in time? Go ahead, Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, two things. There was a caveat on the family pass, I think, if technically and operationally feasible. There's no comment that I saw in the report. So is it safe to assume that that's fine? It's just a new thing and it's no real issue there. We'll just deal with any sort of followed at budget time, basically?
Staff are indicating yes, that is correct.
Okay. And then the other piece, you recommended two of the changes taking place upon adoption and everything else till January 2nd in 2027. What is different about those two, or why those two?
So the two, I'll just back up to that slide quickly. So the first one is the filming fees, because that's for commercial clients. Staff feel that we could start charging the fees immediately, and that there isn't a requirement to give additional notice. And the second one is for number 6. That's the cemetery change, where the oversized liner was 6,000 and should be reduced to 600. And staff are recommending changing that immediately. So in the event that someone does need that fee to be charged.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands for questions. So if we're ready, Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, I'll move the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor French, go ahead. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Hamilton?
Yeah, thanks very much for the consideration of the requests from the committee of the whole or first reading. I forget which one it was. I think the timing of the changes makes good sense. Staff need time when fees are changing. Staff need time to adjust budgets. And with the related to filming and cemetery regulations, it makes sense to move those earlier for this reason staff have suggested. Thanks for the small corrections to the recreation fees. And I sincerely hope that the family pass, the annual family pass, is something that our community finds benefit in. And we can help get people into the Brennan Park as a family, feeling like part of the facility as a whole. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor Herford. I support what's in front of us, and every time these things come to us, and I'm looking through, I find other things that I wish we were dealing with at the time. So what's in front of us all looks great, and then if I get into stuff I wish we were changing that we're not, and maybe this could be noted for the next time this comes around to us, abbreviations without definitions. There are some abbreviations in here that make no sense to me. And a good example is O/S, which I believe means, refers to outside. So specifically, waste materials coming from outside Squamish. If someone really wanted to be a stickler for the rules and take us to court on this, they can argue OS stands for whatever they decide it could be standing for. And also there are some inconsistencies with use of commas in numerical representations. So when we get into thousands, sometimes there is a comma, sometimes there's no comma. I'd like to see consistency there. This is the editor in me. And I think that there are still some references to imperial measurements. We're a metric country, although I'm not super confident on that because my quick scan through now, I didn't see any imperial references. But when I've looked at it in the past, I'm sure that I have seen. Best practice is either to use metric, because we are Canadian, or metric with imperial referenced in brackets for those who are still using that system. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comments? Just this to me is easy to support. The changes that were recommended by council were addressed explicitly here, and I really appreciate that. And I think these changes make good sense, including the piece that we have in front of us here as to these two pieces that are changed as of adoption, which will likely be next week, ? Yeah, next week. So I think it's important that we make the changes as fast as we can when we can. And this makes good sense to me. So I'm happy to see this move forward. And I will also acknowledge that it is a document that will continue to get updates. And we've already heard where the next one is. So perhaps some of the editor pieces are adjusted there, or some things that are more substantive that we're all not seeing as we're having this discussion here as well. That'll be a matter for this room in another day. I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. So we have a couple adoptions here today, and as is our practice, we do not have any presentations with these. These were all things that have done what they need to do to get to this point. So I'll be looking for motions from council. The housing agreement bylaw for 38201 Westway Avenue, moved by Councillor French, second by Councillor Hamilton. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we're on to the revenue anticipation borrowing bylaw, moved by Councillor Hamilton. I will second that. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. And if everyone's, maybe we've been kind of pushing, we'll take a quick 5-minute break. And when we come back, we'll go into item 4.1, which is the Code of Conduct bylaw review. Thank you. note. Well, welcome back, everybody. We are on item 4.1, which is the Code of Conduct Bylaw review. I'll turn it over to staff to orient us on this subject.
Thank you. My name is Melissa Bluto. I'm the Director of Corporate Administration, and I'm joined by Julie Wenge, GM of Corporate Services. And today we are here to help facilitate a council discussion regarding District of Squamish Code of Conduct Bylaw number 2912/2022. At the December 16th, 2025 regular business meeting, the following motion was brought forward from the closed portion of the November 25th, 2025 special business meeting, that council rise and report that the Code of Conduct Bylaw be reviewed at a committee of the whole meeting prior to the election. I recognize this isn't a committee of the whole meeting, but we are going to take this opportunity to hopefully accomplish the same thing. A little bit of background on the Code of Conduct Bylaw. In 2021, the province implemented legislation in the community charter that required municipalities to consider adopting a code of conduct. District of Squamish Code of Conduct Bylaw number 2919 was adopted July 19th, 2022. Currently, the province is looking to further standardized code of conducts across the province, including introducing a framework that will be required of all municipalities. On April 2nd, 2026, the province introduced Bill 17 to the legislature. The bill has received first reading and it has not progressed past that. A high-level summary of Bill 17, a standardized complaint framework will be introduced, including a consistent process for filing and managing complaints. Provisions for alternative dispute resolution, such as mediation or mutual resolution, will be prescribed. A formalized investigation and decision-making model involving independent investigators is also included in the draft legislation. And there are defined sanctions and enforcement tools that will be consistent across local governments. So they are pretty significant changes. And right now the bill is only at first reading. And before the legislation is implemented, the bill does need to go through second and third reading and then final royal assent. And in addition to that, it does often take the province time to draft the regulation to accompany how something will be implemented. So there isn't a timeline on this. The goal of the province was to ensure that this was going to be in place in advance of the October 17th election. I am reticent that that's going to happen at this point, based off of the time that this is taking to move through the system. It isn't clear at this time if the legislation will support the current bylaw or if it will repeal and fully supersede bylaws that are currently in place across the province. Because of this, staff are recommending that council provide feedback on the Code of Conduct bylaw that staff can take and incorporate into the bylaw once the new legislation is in place and there is a framework. One of the requirements in the legislation currently is that a new council must review their Code of Conduct bylaw within 6 months of the election. So regardless of what happens with the legislation, the bylaw will be before council again for consideration in 6 months and at least review. Thank you.
And if, thank you for that. I know that there's a lot of unknowns here, but the feedback today will find its way into where will that go and how will that get to? I'm trying to make sure that I think the intent of council, or at least some of, I'll look to council to correct me if I'm wrong, but it is to capture some of the experience and the thoughts of this to help inform, and a future council of course can completely disregard them if that's what they wish to do. But will they be included in that 6-month review time to report to council? Is that sort of the thought process here?
Like any of our reports, we generally provide a history and background information on what has happened with a bylaw in the past. So what would be beneficial with this is to include a link to the video that the next council can review and actually look at the feedback specifically that council said. Staff are prepared to take notes on the bylaw if there are specific sections of the bylaw that council has found challenging or has specific corrections that they would like to propose in the future, and we can incorporate those into an amendment if that is the direction that we end up moving, rather than just having the bylaw superseded.
Okay, Councillor Pettingill, you want to start us?
Yeah, just a perspective and then maybe a question. I guess, you know, we weren't necessarily expecting to have a meeting today, and our two of our colleagues are not here, and they actually happen to be the all of female portion of our council. And so I feel like we can have an initial discussion, but there should be a discussion with everyone, I feel like, on council. And so I'd be inclined to maybe just wait to have that discussion. I think I have feedback on a few things that, to my mind, I don't think would be superseded by provincial changes, is my gut feel. It may be something that we may choose to include regardless of what the province does. And so I guess that's sort of my feeling. Like, I think we can't finish the discussion today. And so do we wait and have it once, or do we take two cracks at it? A little more open there.
I think just a couple things, Sarah, and thank you for bringing this up. A commitment I made to councils and to myself is I don't adjust what's going to be on the agenda depending on who can attend. That's just a standard. However, I agree some of these conversations were better with everybody. There's no guarantee at a different meeting that we won't have another form of council in attendance there, although we do have strong attendance generally as a council. So I think the challenge with doing this another time, maybe we can do two touch points. We get through some of it, but even then, I think we might be repeating because it's a group conversation. Is just where that falls. We don't have a lot of capacity in July, and then it goes into election season. And I think this is always codes of conduct are we just want to be sensitive to what we're doing in that time. But I think if we defer this, it's a September conversation. Does that sound about right? I'll just look to corporate officer on the scheduling piece.
Yes, it would be a September conversation, and we have scheduling constraints in September, including UBCM week and some other elements in there. Budget starts as well in September.
Councillor Pettingill.
From my mind, to September, even I don't know if there's one Tuesday in October before the election, but even that, like, to me, from my perspective, this isn't an election sensitive topic because it is something that the next council will sort of presumably mostly just take as feedback. And so I see, for me, that's the better path. And then, well, I'll ask my question. The other piece is there an ability to have a portion of this in the closed, just because, and not to rehash things, but it might be helpful to reference some specific examples, which can't do in the open comfortably. And so I just worry that if I'm trying to say, well, here's the thing I want to do, and there's this sort of abstract.
Let's ask some interactions with this bylaw are generally covered largely in the closed. So sharing experience with it, I think, could be challenging here. But let's go to our corporate officer, and how would we facilitate? Is it possible to facilitate that conversation with the legislative constraints we operate under?
As council knows, we have a requirement to adhere to Section 90 of the Community Charter, and the discussion needs to be specific enough to warrant closing the meeting under a specific section. If a councillor did feel that there was a specific topic related to the bylaw that might touch on a community charter section 90 clause, council could discuss considering to close the meeting for that purpose. A general conversation on the bylaw, the code of conduct bylaw, in general, isn't likely a valid reason to close a council meeting, but a specific topic of discussion could be considered.
So if we were to, on the matter of deferral, I think without this provincial action, there was some time pressure of trying to get the changes in place for the, that we may want to see prior to the election, so that 6-month review captures that's the best way to articulate our feedback, is by way of bylaw or policy, I think. However, with the state that we're in, I agree the time pressure is not necessarily there. Either way, whether we have the conversation today in its entirety or not, I think we should find a way to have the specific closed conversation that and we can work with corporate officer to see that we can find that. But it needs to be very focused so that we are doing, like, all our work as much as possible in front of the public. So I don't know if you want to try where that leaves you, Councillor, if you want to move to defer. If anyone feels strongly about this, I'd like to get a feel for the room. Go ahead.
Yeah, a suggested path forward that I'm attempting to maximize the amount of opportunity council has to reflect and give feedback, meaningful feedback, while minimizing the amount of actual agenda time that we're taking up on it, because I do recognize that our agenda time between now and the end of term is tight. Is there a mechanism by which council can be asked to give written feedback on the code of conduct, and that we can include that written feedback on the code of conduct in an agenda, and have at that moment an opportunity for conversation if necessary? I think that will limit the amount of time required for council in the meeting to express a particular viewpoint. It can effectively be communicated in writing before the meeting.
Other feedback on this, or does Councillor French?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Herford. This topic for me just is not a priority at this point. I think we have far bigger issues that I'd like us to take care of between now and October, when this term ends. And then, having said that, I agree with Councillor Pettingill in that the diversity that I think we need in this room isn't here today. So Councillor Hamilton's suggestion of written feedback, I think, could help to address that lack of diversity, if council feels, unlike me, that this is a priority that needs to have some discussion before the end of the term.
Okay. I think that just in general, I do think it's important that we provides some feedback and anything that, and this is broadly, but including this on pieces we've interacted with and lessons that we've learned, suggestions to future council. So I do think it's important that it happens, and but we can solicit some. I'm hearing that we should defer, so I'm going to move that we defer this, and we'll come up with a process to address that. So we'll defer this to a future meeting, and if it's seconded, I'll speak to it. Are you seconding that, Councillor Anderson?
Mayor Herford, I actually had a question for staff, if you may wish to field that at this time. Or?
Sure.
Thank you. I have reviewed in detail the Bill 17, and I spent most of my time focused on that document rather than referring back to our council code of conduct bylaw. And two sections struck me as my curiosity as to alignment. And one was the investigator, referral to investigator, section 113 in the bill, and also the sanctions which may be recommended also under section 113. My question to staff is whether staff have noted a misalignment, or and you have to be a lawyer to interpret some of this clauses in Bill 17. It may be that there's some flexibility here in the wording for local autonomy, if you like, in charting a course on either one of these things. So I just wondered if I could ask if staff have noted any misalignment between our current bylaw and Bill 17. I'll start with that. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Because the legislation is still in its early stages, staff haven't invested much time into reviewing the legislation in its specifics yet. That, and when there are major changes that impact local governments, the province does a very good job of providing training opportunities and information to communities to make sure they understand the nuances of the legislation. So to ensure that staff are using their time effectively, we often wait until later in the process and piggybacked with the information provided by the province to support the legislative changes.
Thank you. I might add that, and in relation to our discussion about whether we should defer, and it seems to me that the picture painted by staff as to the process from here, including the provision that this must be reviewed within, our bylaw must be reviewed within 6 months of the municipal election, there's actually quite ample scope or opportunity ongoing, there will be, for review of our bylaw and its alignment with eventual provincial legislation. I can go one way or another as to whether we defer. I do sympathize with Councillor French's observation that we have other important business that we must address. I will also point out that we had opportunity to discuss our bylaw in connection with the invitation to provide input to the UBCM. That'd be about a year and a half ago, I believe. And an observation I made at that time is that I would be disappointed to see the provincial legislation be a make-work project for lawyers. And this is why my attention is drawn to the issue of appointing an investigator. I'm not sure that we need to be creating a make-work project for lawyers. And it's not always necessary in the cases which may come before the review or in the context of a code of conduct bylaw. So I just make that observation that we have had opportunity to address this through the UBCM input process, and I do think there's healthy opportunity to review this ongoing, but I'll just leave it for the majority as to whether we defer or not. That's my comments for now. Thank you.
Councillor Pettingill.
Do you have a seconder yet? I was going to second.
Yeah, I don't have a seconder, but if you'd like to second, so we'll defer this to a future meeting prior to, sorry, I'm going to clarify, defer this to a future meeting prior to the end of term, and seconded by Councillor Pettingill. I appreciate the conversation we've been able to have here, including highlighting that, again, this council to me shows a collaborative nature of wanting to have all the voices at the table while we have important conversations. I do think that there will be the opportunity, a legislated requirement that this particular bylaw be reviewed 6 months within 6 months of the election. But I do think it is important that we provide some feedback, and not knowing how the new provincial legislation is going to interact with our existing bylaw, or if it's going to set a new baseline and communities are welcome to go further, or like how that will work exactly. I do think it's important that we provide some feedback into that, and future council can do what they see fit with that, if anything. And by deferring a little bit later down the line here, we will also potentially, I'm optimistic we'll have some more clarity as to what that provincial legislation is, and perhaps that wipes this conversation right off the board as it goes through its next steps in the legislature. So let's wait, and so for those reasons, I'm happy to support this direction and look forward to that conversation if we end up needing to have it based on where legislation is at that point in time. Councillor Pettingill, do you want to chime in on this? And
Yeah, thanks. And I would hope to have my colleagues' support and thank them in advance for their support to defer this. I do think this is an important topic for us to discuss. I think I have seen some areas for improvement and why it's important when you look at some other councils that are not functioning well. A huge amount of community resources and time gets burnt on just interpersonal grievances and conflict, and you don't end up doing the work of the community. And so I think that's what we're here to do. And so it is really important, I think, to make sure that we are making sure that there's a good framework for whoever sits in these seats, puts all their focus on the work of the community and not challenges with each other. And so I think it is important, especially for this topic, to make sure we're hearing all the perspectives from our colleagues. This is a bit of an unusual case because this was not an expected meeting. I know we're trying to do many things. I would just add, for me, one of the gaps I see at a high level is there are many things code of conduct deals with, but for me, the area is when there is some interpersonal conflict, dealing with that early and providing a framework to do that effectively and early before you get down the road of a full code of conduct thing. And for me, there's some gaps in there and some room for improvement. And that's sort of an area that I'm interested in exploring with my colleagues a little bit, just as a bit of a preview, I think, where I may go.
Thank you. Any other comments on this? Councillor Hamilton, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I agree with the motion deferring this conversation. I think it's important that everybody is in the room for this particular conversation because we're effectively asking for feedback from everybody. And so, yeah, I absolutely see that point. I hope there's a mechanism by which we can provide this feedback effectively and efficiently. Because we're not making, I agree that we shouldn't be making changes to the code of conduct bylaw at this point. Our core mission here, our core goal is to give feedback for the future council to take into account when they consider changes. And I think there are mechanisms beyond putting it just into a council meeting for a conversation. I think that asking council to reflect on it and make a written submission might be an efficient way forward, but I won't go as far as insisting on it because I think that that's a mechanism that we can decide as a council. And obviously that written submission has to be public and viewable in open meetings. But anyways, that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to see no other hands. I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries. So what we'll do now is we'll do the motion to close, which I will move. Second by Councillor Hamilton for the reasons stated in the agenda. And I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. And now we'll recess, and we are ahead of schedule. We're gonna come back at 1 o'clock though, so we get a little bit longer lunch, but we're still ahead of schedule. Okay, so I'll recess, and we'll continue in the close at 1 o'clock. Thank you.